Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Crawley Town Supporters Alliance Simply Reds podcast. My name is Reuben, and I'm joined by Louie. You doing all right, Louie?
Good evening. Yeah, I'm all right, Reuben. How you doing?
Yes, I'm not doing too badly, thank you. And we're also joined for the very first time. Bradley, you doing all right, Bradley?
Yeah, fine. Thanks, Reuben. Thanks for having me.
That's all right, any time. Hope you've all had a good Christmas, good New Year, and hopefully the football hasn't spoiled any of it, because it's not been the best few weeks for Crawley. Well, it's not been a good few months. I think we worked at last time we actually beat an 11-man side was back in September against Cheltenham. Since then, we've only really won twice in the league, both against teams with 10 men. But since our last podcast, we've played 5 matches. We've lost 4 of them, drew 1 of them. So we first lost to Swindon at their place 1-0. Then drew 1-0 with Colchester, lost 3-1 against Bromley, lost 2-1 against Barnet, then lost 3-0 against Cheltenham. So Louie, it's not been our best period, has it?
No, and I think that can basically just be the end of the podcast, can't it?
Yeah.
I think it's just been. I mean, I think everyone's just frustrated. It's not been good enough, and there's so many sort of. I mean, you just look at the 5 games that we played that you mentioned since we last spoke, and it's just a lot of the same things going wrong. A lot of just it's maddening, and I think we'll probably touch on this a bit more. But if you anyone who's listened or watched to Scott's most recent comments after the Cheltenham game, I think he seemed pretty sick of it as well. I think we're all just waiting for it to get better, and without really knowing when or how it will. So yeah, a bit of frustrating Christmas period from the football side of things. Obviously, not the results that we wanted, not the results that we needed. And this might sound a bit daft, but probably in some of those games, not the results we deserved in 1 or 2 of those games. And I think, I've banged on about it over the course of the season, but if you look at our performances, the majority of them have actually been okay. We have been either the better team or at least competitive in I'd say the 80% of our games. I can think of 5 off the top of my head where we've just genuinely been outplayed, and 2 of those were against top of the league Bromley. So that's not necessarily an indicator of us being a bad team, but as we said all season, we can't stick the ball in the back of the net, and we have a horrible habit of shooting ourselves in the foot at the back. So despite the fact I think we're competing in a lot of games and we're creating chances, we should be. We should have scored probably 9 or. I don't even know how many more goals we should have scored this season. It feels like every game we're looking at a gilt-edged chance that we've missed. That's either, not got us the points that we needed, or not got us back into the game, and even over these 5 games, you can look at. I think pretty much in maybe not the Bromley game, but in every game we've missed gilt-edged chances at crucial times, and it happens in football. It happens once or twice, and you kind of expect it, and that's the nature of the game. But when it's happening nearly every game we're looking at, we're going, oh, we should have scored a couple, or we've missed this chance to go 1-0 up just before half time, or whatever it is. It speaks volumes, and I think that's where the frustration comes from, because if you look at those performances and the kind of underlying numbers that come from the performances, and I know the results the most important thing, and that the stats don't matter. The stats aren't what's going to keep you up at the end of the season, but the performances are largely there, and that's what's so frustrating. We just haven't got the quality at each end of the pitch to actually kind of make those chances count, and it's deeply frustrating, I think is the word.
Yeah, it's very painful at the moment, particularly when we have we normally have 1 good half, where we could have quite easily been 2 or 3-0 up, and then in the second half we just get something happens.
That's another theme as well, yeah.
So Bradley, do you think that we are just missing a striker, and if we were to get a striker, we'll be sorted, or do you think there's kind of further issues?
No, I think I mean, look, for me, I think definitely at any level of football, you need 15 goals from a striker or a strike partnership um, to get anywhere. I mean, Harry McCurdy's our top scorer on 5, I think, and that could have been more. He's missed a couple of penalties, but I think Scott said it a couple of weeks ago that the strikers that we have are not cold enough in a sense of being able to just take that chance without sort of thinking about it. Without it's almost like they overthink it. But I think there's some issues kind of throughout the team that I can see as a fan. I mean, I've not been a great fan of the goalkeeper. I don't think he's good enough. I think centre half, I would love to see Radcliffe get a start over maybe Conroy. I think we've made some recruitment in that area, and we'll talk about transfers a bit later. I think in midfield we lack creativity. So as much as we say yes, we need 15 goals from somebody, there's not a Lolos/Darcy/Liam Kelly type figure that looks forward with the ball and can put it on a plate for someone. I definitely feel like that's an area. Kamari Doyle did it really well last year when he came in towards the second half of the season. He just had that vision to be able to play people in behind. Because we don't have that, we're then playing this kind of long ball football. And I don't know. It's not lovely to watch, is it? And B, you would argue right now, based on the results and the statistics, that it's ineffective. So, in that regard, old saying, I hate it, but I'm going to use it anyway. I think we need a whole new spine. I would go from front to back, and you need there are good players, excuse me, in there. But some of those that have been good and excelled over the past 9 months, a year, even in League One, you can sort of see their levels are coming down. I don't know if it's confidence, heads drop. It's a really interesting point that you made. 2 home games over Christmas. First half, we were completely in those games and really buoyant. And then, I don't know, it's like everyone went to the pub at half time and came back. It was like watching a completely different thing. And it, so obviously different. And I guess coming down out of League One last year, I suppose, rightly or wrongly, our anticipation was that we would maybe compete in the top half of League Two at least. And there were, Charlie Barker, Josh Flynn, really good players in League One last year. And now, I know no one wants to be in a relegation battle. And, I genuinely don't believe any professional footballer will go out with the intent of doing a bad job. Right? But at the moment, there's just we're not dominating games. We're not controlling possession. I don't know if that's because we don't have the personnel to do it. But we definitely lack a real kind of creative spark. I mean, I get really frustrated. And it happens in the Premier League as well. No one ever wants to shoot from outside a box now. Kamari Doyle did it for us to great effect last season. Bradley Ibrahim's goal against Wrexham. Jack Rolls is great at it. But we almost kind of want to walk it in all the time. And we're not, at the moment, we're not at that level to be able to do that, I don't think.
Yeah, and that's why I quite like Jack Rolls. Whilst I don't necessarily think he's our strongest player when he starts, but when you're goal or two down in like the 70th minute, he's quite a worthwhile player to throw into the mix because he isn't afraid to shoot. I mean, he's probably a bit of a selfish player, I think, at times, but sometimes you do just need to shoot because if you don't shoot, you'll never score.
And I think that for me is when we've played 80 minutes and we've had maybe one shot on target or no shots on target, and we keep doing the same thing and the same thing and the same thing and expect a different result, it's like, well, hang on a minute. And, I personally, I think Reece Brown's too lightweight for this level. And I don't think he brings enough. Unfortunately, Cashman has found himself injured. I mean, he, from what I saw in pre-season and the little bit of football he did play and what I've seen of him at Worthing, he is that kind of creative player, that kind of number 10, almost Maddison-like in terms of the way he plays. But then he's not there. And at the same time, with the best will in the world, surely a team that just got relegated from League One, our big hope can't be signing a player from the National League on a free and expecting them to kind of deliver everything in their first full season in professional football. So I think we need creativity because this element of, long ball football and someone try and knock it on only works if people are going to run in behind, and we don't have people running in behind either. And I think where some of the frustration comes from with the fans is everyone's an armchair manager, right? And we can see these things and go, right, well, that's not working. Yet we keep doing it for 90 minutes and expect something different to happen. That gets frustrating. And, I don't know. I mean, it feeds into everything, doesn't it? I mean, the atmosphere doesn't feel at the Broadfield this year like it did last year. Bar the two games over sort of Christmas, I think, attendances are slowly dwindling down. I've certainly noticed the people that normally sit around me aren't bothering to come to games anymore and things like that. And to a certain degree, yes, football's about winning, but it's also a kind of entertainment industry. We all go out there and sit out in all the weathers because we want to be entertained and we want to have something to cheer. And it feels, I think, did you say September, the last time we beat 11 men at the Broadfield?
Yeah.
Right. Well, the last time we beat 11 men, full stop. And I recall that game. Cheltenham were in disarray at that time as well. I remember they had banners. They were trying to get their manager and director of football sacked and all that sort of stuff. So, I don't know. It's a difficult one, and I look around the team, and I suppose when you're down in the position we find ourselves in at the moment, you need leaders, and I don't necessarily see enough of those. I don't, I think Scott's interview at the weekend, whether you liked it, you didn't like it, I think there's only so many times he can go out and kind of defend that, and then to go out and say, this is not what we're doing, this is not what we're sort of trying to impose every week in training. I don't even know what I'm watching is concerning. And I do think the players have to have some accountability for that, because they don't become bad players overnight. People like Harry Forster, Adiema, they were good in League One. I know, we've lost a lot of players. There's been a lot of turnover of players. And a lot of what came in over the summer probably isn't good enough. So now January presents an opportunity to kind of try and go again and sort of fix some of that. And I think, it comes to something when Scott Malone's been one of the real standout players for us since he came back, because he looked, to me, massively out of his depth last season in League One. But at League Two, he's a leader. You know, I see him shouting at people. He organises things on the pitch. I think he's been a big loss as well since he's been injured.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of players that have been injured, you know, Cashman, Malone, and I feel like that's probably something that's not really been talked about. I've not seen anyone really mention the fact that we haven't had a consistent spine in the team, apart from the back three who have played the most minutes out of everyone. Our top, in terms of minutes played, it is Flint, Barker, then Conroy. And that says a lot when we're conceding the amount of goals we are and making the amount of mistakes we are at the back. But they're the only three players who are pretty much guaranteed to play every week. It's that isn't going to help things. But you know, we've had, I mean, how many players have played out on left wing back for us? You know, we've had Cashman, we've had Forster, Adiemo. I think Pereira's played there. Flint played there at Barnet.
That's
seven players who have played in that one position, for example. And
what I found really interesting, he put Rolls at left wing back when Scott came back last year. Towards the end of the season, he put Rolls at left wing back, and Rolls did a really decent job at left wing back, and created some stuff. And I feel like, you know, that was probably a square peg in a round hole because he didn't have the personnel to play the system that he wanted to play towards the end of last year. But again, it's, you know, yes, ultimately, normally a back three, a back two, they play together, they build up a partnership, they build up an understanding. And at times, there are times, usually once or twice in a game, and usually when we concede a goal, where the three of them look like they've never played football together before. You'll find them both. Charlie Barker and Dion Conroy might go up for the same header and leave us overexposed, or, you know, and I think some of that comes from going back to injuries. I think Max Anderson's been a big miss because he is somebody that will put his foot on a ball. He'll slow the game down and give people time to run on. You know, I had a conversation with Scott after the Swansea game. We were at the services and the team came in, and I had a long conversation with Scott, and he was telling me that obviously Cashman and Pereira had been in and out over pre-season and didn't start the season, but he said they were two really, really good footballers. I've not seen that from Pereira, if I'm honest. I don't think Pereira has been the races in the position he's playing in at the moment, which predominantly is right wing. I don't know if he's better off further up, if it's, you know, better off as a winger. I don't know what it is. But this reliance on the kind of three at the back and the wing backs, given the injuries and the personnel that we've had prior to January and some of the players coming in, it feels like we've never really had the personnel for that. Adiemo's not good enough defensively to be a wing back. He's fantastic going forwards. And I think, you know, Harry Forster does that role well, but even the last few games he's played, he looks devoid of kind of confidence in what's behind him. And I suppose if in the wing back system, you've got to have faith that the three defenders behind you are safe and secure and you can run on, right? And obviously when you're conceding the amount of goals that we are, there's probably a reluctance to go on and then be on the end of those flick-ons from Ryan Loft or, you know, the new Adiemo, as I call him, etc. But, you know, I don't like the system. I think it doesn't play to our strengths. And from what I've seen, whether it be under Scott, whether it was under Rob Elliott last year, our philosophy the last 18 to 24 months was possession-based football. And we've gone from possession-based football and at times under Rob Elliott going mad that we've got all this ball and doing nothing with it, to we just lump it forwards and it inevitably comes back. because we've got a three in the middle that there's nobody in front of them. So, you can have a Jay Williams, you can have a Badrami, great. They retrieve the ball and they make a sideways pass or a slight forward pass to give the ball to someone that's a bit more creative, can play a ball around a corner, can see a run. We don't have that. So then invariably, whether it be the goalkeeper, the centre halves, or the two defensive midfielders, we're going long and almost kind of bypassing that number 10 position. And that's very easy to play against in this level.
I mean, I remember one of Scott's interviews in the first season he was here, where he said it's something. I think that somebody asked him about what his plan B is, and he always said his plan B was to do plan A better, which I find interesting. But I mean, one of his comments this weekend was the fact that either the players need to change, or he needs to change, or the club needs to change. One of the things needs to change.
It's a bit Reuben Amorim, isn't it? At Manchester United, this is the formation that we're going to play, and that's fine to a degree, right? If you come in and you go, this is how we're going to play, I need X, Y, Z things to do that, and you recruit those. But we don't live in a world in League Two where you can go out and buy 12, 15 of the top quality players. And I think, look, I went to Bromley away and I went to Bromley at home. Bromley away, excuse me, we were in that game. And Bromley at home, we were in that game. Bar my cheek, right? That's the difference. That a 20 goal a season striker, and you saw it, right? Clinical, absolutely clinical. I think at the Broadfield he had 3 shots, and he scored with all 3 of them, and does very little outside of that. Right, he's just ready when the team play to that, and that is exactly the sort of thing we did under Scott before when we had Orsi, right? Orsi, I remember someone saying to me when we got promoted that Orsi was too lightweight for League One. He didn't run enough, he didn't work enough. League Two, he was great. Excuse me. But, I think if you've got those goals, they're a precious commodity. And then they've got, some big lads at Bromley at the back that are pretty defensive minded. But, at no point did I feel like they completely played us off the park. Right? And this is the team at the top of the table. They just had a clinical striker.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at our goal, our past 2 goals. I mean, our goal against Barnet was McCurdy was just waiting behind the goalkeeper, and for whatever reason, the goalkeeper didn't look behind him, even though when you were watching the video, you can hear fans shouting behind you. And then our other goal before that was from a set piece. And so scoring from kind of open play isn't really our speciality at the moment. And one thing that also doesn't help is whilst even if we could score, we're conceding a lot, especially at set pieces. I remember, I think we had Steve, who was the goalkeeping coach the year we got promoted, and he was saying how that season we were like one of the best at defending set pieces.
We were good at attacking them as well.
Yeah,
we scored. I think our chances created, or our again XG. I know not everyone likes it, but from set pieces, one of the highest in League Two that season, and we were really strong defending them. And it's almost completely the inverse ever since then. Like last year in League One, particularly at the start, we had awful problems defending set pieces, and it took Rob Elliott a good few weeks to sort that out before we looked like a team that actually kind of knew what they were doing at set pieces. And this season, it's been the same.
Start of this season, the only sort of person that was really attacking corners for us when they came in was Badrami. It was the one thing he really brought in, and I think he scored a couple. Which amazes me because I remember sitting I think it was Scott's first game back last year, and Charlie Barker just headed everything that came his way that day. And I remember thinking, how can you be so good defensively with heading the ball, but we can't win a ball in the opposition box from a corner?
Yeah.
It just made no sense to me.
Yeah, and like I noticed at Cheltenham, when we were defending corners, we actually put 2 people up at the halfway line for whatever reason. Like, considering that's a weakness of ours, why are we putting more players at the halfway line and then keeping them back?
I mean, the Cheltenham one's maddening because I can't remember. I think for the third goal, their centre back, he just come on and he has a run. He makes a free head, and he just makes a run, gets a free header, heads it a few yards wide near post. It's a warning shot, right? About 3 minutes later, the exact same ball comes in. He makes the exact same run, and this time he sort of glances it across goal and it goes in the far corner. And it's like there's set piece coaching, right? And obviously something's gone wrong there because we've conceded something. But there's also the players have to take some responsibility to learn on the pitch, right? That lad's just had a free header, making a simple run across the box, across us. And yet again, if you watch that Cheltenham third goal, if you can bear to bring yourself to do it, no one tracks it. I think it was, I can't even remember whose man it was. I can't even remember. Someone's man marking.
I can tell you who ran off. He ran off of the new Adio man.
That was it. Yeah, that was it. And I mean, okay, he's a striker. He's new to the team. He wouldn't have been. I mean, I can kind of trying to find reasons, not necessarily excuses, but reasons why he might have lost his man.
But also, Scott,
he's already done it. It's already happened once.
We've gone from zonal to man.
So something has to change.
If you've gone from zonal marking to man marking, and then you've let your man run off you, that's poor.
Yeah, that's on you. It's on you. Not on. Whereas zonal marking is much harder to coach from a set piece point of view, from what I know, and so. And with man marking, the risk you run there is if you are up against a big team like a Bromley or I don't know, say it's like something like a Stevenage last season, with quite a few big players, you run the risk of the ball comes in, and if someone gets the better of you, you've not able to attack the ball, you're in real trouble. So there's the risks there as well. Yeah, there
was the goal as well. I can't. It might have been the Cheltenham game, but the ball came in from the left, and they scored a header. And you watch it back, and the guy gets in between Conroy and Flint.
I think it was the first goal against Bromley.
Oh, might well have been.
Yeah, it was like the only chance they had in the. Yeah.
Right, and it's just like, and I think Conroy almost kind of tries to fall over and win a foul. I think is what he's trying to do. But the ball gets in between the two centre halves, and you sort of think, like, come on, like, we're not bad at heading a ball. If there's one thing we can do, it's head a ball away defensively. We tend to make the mistakes more when the ball's on the floor. But for some reason, set pieces, it really is. I mean, we have 10 in the box trying to defend a set piece, and we leave like Reece Brown up there, which is fine. Because I don't think Reece Brown's going to offer a lot in the box offensively.
No, there's a reason he's the one.
He's the guy, right? But at the same time, then the flip side of that is if the ball gets turned over, is Reece Brown going to be able to hold the ball up while everyone else bombs on? So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot to be made of set pieces. And what concerns me is, in the modern game, there's a lot of long throw element that's almost becoming corner taker-like. So now, not only have we got to worry about corners, we've sort of got to worry about long throws, 10 yards either side of the box. I don't know what the kind of magic answer to that is. I know a lot of people now have dedicated set-piece coaches. It's an art form. I think, the most famous one is the Brentford manager was the set-piece coach.
Yeah. But it's funny you say about the long throws, because obviously we brought in Johnny Russell, and one of the things we were told to watch out. And one of the things we were told to watch out for was he's got a hell of a throw on him, and he absolutely does. But against Cheltenham, the amount of times there'll be a flick on, we'd actually get that first, I think they call it the first contact, or we get a flick on, or even if the Cheltenham player it would fall to sort of near the penalty spot. It'd fall like it's somewhere in the middle of the box. And if just someone was anticipating, if someone was just alive to the fact that, right, well, it's a long throw, it's probably going to be flicked on from the near post, because if it goes any further than that, that's insane. That's like Rory Delap levels of long throw.
Yeah.
And so, but no one's anticipating. No one. And again, okay, you can coach set piece routines. You can, and it's one of the things that can improve when players are coached with it. But after the first 2 or 3, because we had quite a few going in the box, why is no one thinking, right, okay, there's a few that have dropped in this area, I'm just going to gamble. No one, and it's almost the same problem that we had trying to defend those corners. No one learning and no one actually taking responsibility during the match to go, okay, that's happened once, we got away with it. Someone's got to stick with him.
I think
that big centre back
one
is
of
just
the
gone
things,
and it's the same thing. No one's learning.
You've got to learn on the job sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's Scott's frustration, part of it, because he's just not able to. He's kind of looking, well, hold on a minute, how many chances or how many potential shots could we have had if someone just gambled on a flick on from a throw in, and how many goals would we be keeping out if people actually tracks their man in the box? And it's
one of the things.
I think that's where the frustration is, because you can't. There's not much the manager can do about that in the middle of the game.
Well, I was going to say, to a certain degree, best laid plans and all that, right? So you start off with a plan. I think we saw it. Was it against Barnet? Loft went off, didn't he? And we had a tactical timeout, as they described it on Sky Sports, where I think Harvey Davies broke a toenail out for a bit, didn't he? So that we could realign and reshape, and it did make a difference. But yeah, it ultimately, you've got to go out there and take some accountability and say, right, that's what I'm trying here is not working, so I'm going to try something else. And I've said this to Reuben, and it's I like this. I use it a lot at work, but same action, same result. And if we keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, that's the definition of madness. And that feels like everything with us at the moment. We'll spend 80 minutes trying to walk the ball in, and then suddenly, there's 6 minutes to go, and we all go hell for leather, and Jack Rolls will start shooting from outside the box, and suddenly we kind of come to life, and we look like a team that can compete. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, like we should have been doing this from the start, and we should have been sort of doing some of those things. But I do have some sort of question marks around some selection. There's players that aren't playing that personally I think should be playing, and if they're not playing and they're looking at what's happening on the pitch, what message does that send to them? You're effectively saying it. Scott's interview at the weekend was, I think, very honest, and maybe came a little bit too soon after the game. They maybe should have given him 10 minutes to cool down a bit. But if you're watching that as a Ben Radcliffe that can't get a game at the moment, and going, well, hang on a minute, you're saying all these people are doing a really terrible job, but I can't get a game. What does that say about me?
And I mean, on the Ben Radcliffe point, this is a guy who started games towards the end of League One last season after Scott came back in March. I mean, particularly the win over Bristol Rovers at home, I think he played. I'm pretty sure he might have played at Rotherham. We beat them before. Like, he featured at the end of the season. After coming in January, he didn't look out of his depth in League One.
No.
And then
he looked a real good prospect.
Yeah, and I mean, he might not. He's still very young, so he might not necessarily be first choice week in, week out. But for him to have only played one league game this season, in which, again, I think that was possibly the Fleetwood game, the last game we won.
I think it was.
And so, he played. I remember him playing reasonably well then.
Yeah,
and you can't get a game, but it's I mean, I think again.
Not only can he not get a game, he's seeing players come in now. So Vassell's come in,
yeah,
and got a start ahead of him, right? So if I'm Ben Radcliffe, I mean, I would sit here and say, I mean, I don't know, none of us will never know what goes on behind closed doors, but I'm assuming he's a decent professional. He certainly is. Whether he's in the squad or he's not in the squad, he's always at the ground on match day. wheeled him out for the signing event just before Christmas. Like he's a popular guy with the fans. He seems like he's a proper team player, a decent team player. But ultimately, yeah, okay. I suppose he was Rob's guy. He was at Gateshead with Rob, and then he came in. I genuinely thought he looked a decent footballer. And I just wonder if, in any walk of life, if you feel you're doing your best and you're watching people, I'm not saying they're not doing their best, but not delivering what needs to be delivered, and then you're not given an opportunity, then there's only one thing he's going to do, and he's going to turn around and say, "Don't," right? Because I want to play football. I mean, he's still a young lad. So whether he gets a move to another League Two team, or he goes back into the National League for a year and a half, or whatever it may be, it feels like he's the one for me where I have big. I have a lot of sympathy for him, because I think he's never done anything wrong. And I can show you in the last 6, 7, 8 weeks, central defenders making a lot of mistakes and still keeping their place and still being picked week in, week out. So then comes the question, well, what are we doing? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be much worse than what we currently have. Just looking at some stats, we haven't kept a clean sheet in the past 13 games.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think it's a frustrating one, because the one area of the pitch where we do actually have a settled team, like I said earlier, is that back three, and it's the one area of the pitch that is probably needs to be changed and broken up at this point, because it's clearly not working. The players, even though Flint, Barker, and Conroy have played together a lot over the last season, year and a half now, they've played a lot of minutes together. They should know each other's games really well. Like you said earlier, Bradley, they just look like sometimes they've never played together before. But also, kind of touching on that team selection as a wider point, I feel like something that hasn't helped is the injuries. We've not been able to select a consistent 11. And again, if you contrast it to the team that got promoted, you could probably, most weeks, you knew who 7 or 8 of the players were going to be that week. It was going to be Orsi up front. It's going to be that back three of Wright, Conroy, and Maguire. It's going to be Adai and goal. It's going to be probably Kelly at left back or Sabrula at left back. You knew it was going to be Gordon at right back if he was fit. You knew it was going to be Lolos. You knew it was going to be Liam Kelly and Jay Williams. You knew sort of 8 of the players that were going to play if everyone was fit. So and this season we've had. I don't think the injuries have helped. Cashman's come in and he's clearly meant to be that Jeremy Kelly type player who's coming in off the left and joining in with the midfield. And when we see him play, he looks really tidy and he looks like he's more than capable of doing that. But I think he's played 120 minutes or something this season. He's not been able to stay fit consistently for one reason or another. Jay Williams obviously was out for two or 3 months with a hamstring injury, so that didn't help. The injury situation. Up front, Louie Flower, just as he looked like he was starting, he actually got a chance in the team and looked like he was going to sort of take that chance. He's scored a few goals. He gets injured. We don't know when he'll be back. You could go on and on. Addy Game on Force, they've always had their injury issues, so you can never rely on one of them being fit for a consistent period.
I think as well, the type of football that we play, particularly the wing backs. So you make a really good point there. So Adiemo, Forster, Pereira. There does seem to be, because of the intensity, and I suppose because we're turning the ball over so much and the backwards and the forwards, there does seem to be some sort of fitness issues around that, and I suppose maybe you're more prone to picking up muscle injuries. It's a difficult one because, like you say, we don't have the same depth necessarily. So we had Kelly, we had Forster, we had Adiemo, Malone when he's fit. Like, we don't necessarily have as many to do those jobs. And because of the way that we play, it is quite combative. So, Max Anderson obviously got injured, and they discovered a second injury off the back of that. I don't know where Carl Scott's gone. Seemingly wherever Reggie has gone, he's gone there. But like, there's, I think you're right. The side is really not settled, and maybe it's unfair to just single out the back three because they don't know the people playing in front of the. We've seen Bedrami in the centre. We've seen Bedrami in the holding role next to Jay. I like to be a little bit more pragmatic. There's a lot of negativity a lot of the time because, if we hadn't sold off the promotion team, we wouldn't be in this position, right? That's done. We can't necessarily undo that. And I would always make the argument that a lot of those players that we sold on have not gone on to excel, right? Particularly at League One level, right? So, we would have stayed up if we kept those players. That's mystic, kind of pie in the sky stuff. You have to look at the team we've got at the moment isn't good enough. We've now hit this January transfer window, and we've got players coming in, which is great, and players coming in seemingly from the first minute, which is good. But are they the right players? Are they the players that are going to give us what we need? And I think that's my concern at the moment. I'm not worried about, I agree with you. I think we need to try and find some kind of settled team over the next 2-3 weeks. Hopefully, we've got an extended break now because of our Cambridge game being moved as they're still in the FA Cup. That gives the team time to work on some stuff on the training pitch, but then the comment Scott made that what they're working on is not what's translating to what's on the pitch. That's concerning. So I don't know. I mean, it's a tough watch.
It is.
And I would just like to say it's even tougher when everyone's name and number keeps falling off the back of their shirt.
That was absolutely. I mean, I hate to dig out someone who is just doing an honest day's work, but and I can't remember the kit man's name, so forgive me, but he didn't earn his money at the Cheltenham game. Like, it was to the point where you kind of think, if it happens to one shirt, all right, fair enough. But it was happening. I think it happens to 6 or 7 different players, including
Conroy. He turned into Conroy.
Yeah.
So people were chanting Conroy. I mean,
happened to Johnny Russell twice. Jay Williams.
Yeah. What I loved, my favourite bit was obviously someone tried to iron the 1 back on Johnny Russell's shirt at half time.
Yeah.
It lasted for about 5 minutes. But this happened during Kaheen Dixon's debut as well at home, right? He became Ixon at the end of the first half.
I don't remember that. Okay.
And he got booked, and Sky Sports actually put it as Ixon got booked. And then by the end of the game, I think he was just Ixo. Like, it was just, but I make light of it. It was the one sort of light-hearted moment. It was really difficult to watch.
Yeah, I mean, particularly on the Cheltenham game. Yeah, particularly on the Cheltenham game. I mean, again, the frustrating thing, and it's a theme that kind of weaves through our season, is that first half, there was nothing in it. We've gone to a team who had got a bit of momentum. They've been in largely good form, although I think their performances haven't. I think that their sort of results flatter them a little bit under Steve Cottrell. But yeah, I think they've been in. They're obviously in. They've got momentum, and momentum is quite important in football. There's obviously a good atmosphere around the club compared to what it was when we played them earlier in the season, and we've gone there. We've completely nullified them. I think to go away from home and nullify a team like Cheltenham, who we know they can be. They're direct. They're ugly. They're a Steve Cottrell side. And we had the only chance worth a damn in the first half. We should score it. It's the one bit of good football I can remember us playing, to be fair. But we actually played some, we got on the ball quite a bit in the first half. If there was one team that was going to score, it was us. And we should have scored. And it's, again, that goal goes in. Do I trust us to keep the lead? Probably not. But goals do change games. It's that old cliche. They do change games.
They do.
There's so many games this season where we've not taken advantage of those chances. I mean, even since we last recorded, so the Swindon game, Harry Forster misses an open goal. We have countless other chances. Swindon have 6 shots all game and score a penalty. I think that to be honest, that game sums up our season more than anything. The Bromley game again. I agree with you, Brady. I didn't think they were actually anything special on the ball. Off the ball, they did a complete number on us. They were all over us. But when they had the ball, they just absolutely clinical. Michael Cheek bangs in a hat trick, and there's that. And again, the second goal against Bromley, it's completely. It's a lot of misfortune. It takes a couple of deflections, and he sticks it past the keeper. Colchester, how we don't score at the end. That's
was that the Ryan Loft?
That was the second Ryan Loft incident this season, but somehow worse than that first one, which I think was against, I want to say Barrow at home, or was it Tranmere? I think it was Tranmere at home.
I don't like digging people out, but if he's a professional footballer, there's still hope for me.
I genuinely would have backed anyone else on the pitch for us at that moment to score it. Like Dion Conroy would have scored that. Charlie Barker would have scored that. Like anyone with a modicum of like technique, just get your foot over the ball, just try and stay balanced. I mean, it's easy for us to say, watching, but watching it back, it somehow looked worse than it did in the ground. But again, that's another game where we've missed Gilt-Edge chances to win.
You made an interesting point on Charlton.
We had so many chances in the second half. Again, their keeper pulls off an incredible save. Again, sometimes it's keepers pulling off incredible saves. Sometimes we're missing sitters. Sometimes it's both. Often it has been both. And you just have to. You just despair.
They were saying about Cheltenham. I think they're on a decent run. They've got a bit of momentum. But what they said on the TV, because I wasn't at that game, I did watch it on telly. But they were saying that sort of they've picked up since we played them earlier in the season. Obviously, a regime change, but basically nobody below them has kind of really done anything exceptional. So I think they're. At the time, at the start of the game, I think they were in about 16th, I think.
Yeah, sometimes.
They were 16th to 18th. And I think, like, the gap to us was I think, 12 points. So actually, it's getting to the point now where the next few teams ahead of us are really starting to kind of pull away.
Yes, I was just about to say, I think it's essentially 5 teams in the relegation fight at the moment.
Yeah.
It's us, Shrewsbury, Bristol Rovers, Barrow, Harrogate and Newport. And I mean, I'm just looking at Sky Bet now, and the bookies don't necessarily swear by them, but they don't get a lot wrong. We are 11-4, which is we're the third favourites to get relegated as it stands. Which, I mean, at this point, I think we'd be relieved if we finished
100%.
in 22nd, because we're really struggling to see where the results come from. That being said, I think all of those teams are probably worse than us. If you look at the actual, I know again, results, it's a results-based business, but you look at the, I would back us to finish above all those teams if we can start. It sounds simple, but if we can start putting the ball in the back of the net, we start taking our chances. We can tidy up a little bit at the back and do the basics properly. It doesn't. I was making this point on the Facebook group after the Cheltenham game. There was obviously a lot of discussion, a lot of kind of strong opinions and everything. And I said, as silly as it sounds, it might sound mad, but I don't think a lot needs to change for us to actually start picking up results and going on. We've seen it this season. We've gone on runs of 4 games where we've played well and 4 unbeaten, and that's not a long run. That's not what's going to keep us up. But it doesn't take much for us to go 5 or 6 games where we pick up 10 points, for example, and things look a hell of a lot better. But
prior to Cheltenham and Barnet, I've got to be honest, over Christmas, turning up to the games, I don't go there thinking, "Oh my God, we're going to get beat and we're in a real dogfight."
Exactly.
There are, I go down there. You have your beer, you have your pizza, you go in, and as easily as we lose, we could quite. It wouldn't surprise me if I came home and we had demolished the team.
Exactly. And it's so funny you say that, because I know everyone. Again, I'm going to mention next year again, but the expected goals has us, and you can't swear by stats. You can't have that sort of tunnel vision. But the expected goals has us 14th in the table currently, and at one point it was I think it was 10th or 11th before the Christmas period. We're not a terrible team, and what you just said, Bradley, about we could just as easily win a game as we lose. That's a mid-table team, isn't it? That speaks volumes.
100%. I think the biggest issue at the moment is if we go a goal down, the heads drop.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think Scott touched on that in his interview on Saturday, that, you know, we're not always going to go 1-0 up. Sometimes we are going to go 1-0 down. And I think, you know, in the promotion season and even last year in League One to a certain degree, we would go, and even under Rob, we'd go 1-0 down, but their heads didn't drop. You know, we lacked creativity at times, and you know, it was a tough watch, particularly under Rob, for different reasons. But yeah, look, we could turn up in 10 days' time, and you know, it wouldn't surprise me if Harry McCurdy's walking off with the match ball, and we've absolutely destroyed someone. But at the same time, if we go 1-0 down, it wouldn't be a surprise to me if I came home and we've been destroyed.
Yeah.
Like, it feels like we're really on that knife edge a lot at the moment. Where, like say, in the promotion season and even last year in League One, we played this kind of possession-based football. We could manage games better. I think our game management, you know, there's always going to be spells in games where you're not in the ascendancy. It's how you manage those spells. And, you know, unfortunately against Bromley at home, in that spell, we let Michael Cheek score twice, right? And then you've got a mountain to climb.
I think you touched on something which has been really noticeable this season. We've had good spells in games. We've had good first halves, where it's those fine margins. We've not taken our chances. We've then started second half slowly, or we've not. You know, we had a spell in a game where we've been put under pressure for 10, 15 minutes, and we collapse. You know, you look at what happened at Cheltenham. It was 3 goals in 15 minutes. There's so many games you can point to this season where we've come out, we've been caught cold in the second half, or we just haven't got into the game in the second half.
Second half of Bromley
because
away.
we've not been good enough to take the chances where we've been on top. It's those fine margins. We're not making it count when we're on top. I mean, for example, I'll go back to the Walsall game. We should have been 2 or 3 up at half time, and that would have been game over. But we're only 1-0 up. We've missed a penalty, and then we let them back in the game in the second half, and it's 2 points dropped. You could say the same about the Chesterfield game away earlier in the season, 2-0 up at half time. We let them back in the game because we can't manage. We have no game management. I think I made a comment to you, Reuben, after the Cheltenham game about this is the most weak, mentally weak, pathetic team I've ever seen. And I know it sounds harsh, and perhaps the word pathetic isn't quite fair, but that's what I'm getting at. It's that lack of game management. It's that lack of nous. We go a goal up, and if we were a goal up with say 5 minutes to go plus injury time, I wouldn't back us to see it out. You wouldn't. And there's another stat, and it points to it kind of points to what I'm getting at, which is I think across all leagues historically, the team that scores first wins something like 65 or 66% of the time. We scored first in a fair few games this season.
Yeah,
and we've only won four of them, which I think speaks volumes about our ability to manage games.
Yeah,
and I mean, the only game there's maybe a handful of games where we've conceded and we've kind of stayed in the game, or we've got something, got a point against Atkinson after going a goal down, a point against Oldham where we were a goal up. So that's another game where we've thrown it away, but we were behind and we got a point. Barnet, we equalised, and then we should have got a point from that game, even at the end. That's just a few examples, but yeah, we're not picking up points when we go behind, and we're giving up far too many points. But when we have the advantage, when we're a goal up or even 2 goals up, MK Dons early in the season, we have a really good start to the game, we go a goal up, and they were always going to put pressure on us, and we didn't really see it out. Just so many games. We could go through the whole season.
It's very frustrating.
Colchester home on Boxing Day again.
Yeah. I mean, we'll touch on the transfers. But I mean, it's just worth mentioning that I was fortunate being 10 minutes down the road from the Cheltenham Football Club where I live. But I mean, 12 o'clock kickoff's absolutely rubbish on a Sunday because who on earth's watching Crawley v Cheltenham v Crawley on Sky Sports? I've got no idea.
In the politest way possible, I think any time I see a game any one of our games that gets moved for TV reasons, I do think, who the hell is this for?
Yeah.
It's not for us, and it's not for the opposing team's fans.
Yeah, because I kind of wished when I was tapping my card for a £29.50 ticket to go into the away end at Cheltenham, I was like, I could have just watched it from home. £29.50.
Wow.
That's shot.
Yes.
So it had increased £2 on the day, but £29.50 to watch League Two football.
That is disgusting.
See, I did Bromley away just before Christmas, and I think 2 tickets, the coach. By the time you're done, you're not getting much change out of £100, and that was pretty dire that day.
Yeah. Barnet
that
was the same. 26 quid for the privilege.
You know, and at that moment, I said, if it's on telly, I'm not spending any money on travelling away. You know, they're contractually obliged to show every team so many times a year, aren't they?
Yeah, it does. I mean, yes, I've ranted about it before. It's not. Football's not a TV show. It shouldn't be. We shouldn't be having to travel 4 hours to Cheltenham on a Sunday morning, basically, just to satisfy the whims of some Sky Sports executives.
And there was a real risk that game would have been called off had it not been on TV, because it was on TV. They put the big tent over it, didn't they? And they had the ISA on it all night and all that jazz. But the
benevolent Sky Sports overlords managed to get the game on.
Even at the start of the game, I really felt for Charlie down that side, because anyone that's played football at an amateur level knows you slide on a frozen pitch and it hurts. And each side of the pitch was completely frozen.
I was looking at it thinking, I am still a little bit surprised. Like that end of the pitch where it's had the shadow from, I'm guessing it's their main stand. That was sort of the camera on the side of the TV camera. Yeah, it looks pretty frothy down there. I'm still a little bit surprised that the referee passed the pitch, but kind of wish he hadn't.
Had it not been on Sky Sports, even if they'd put the tent up.
It didn't look great, did it?
Because all the 3 p.m. kickoffs in League Two were stopped. But anyways, quickly touching on the transfers.
Yes.
I mean, the Cheltenham game is almost like a new team, really, when you look at a lot of the players who are playing. I mean, you had Johnny Russell, who apparently was signed for 100k, is what the rumours are, from a Premiership team in Ireland. I mean, Preston Johnson, the old owner, has started doing write-ups kind of pre and post game and talk about all of our transfers. I mean, he says that I think the Northern Irish Premiership is like the equivalent of like non-league.
Yeah.
But I thought, whilst he looked a bit nervy at the beginning, which of course he would be, because he literally just moved to England this week, he actually kind of got into the game quite nicely.
Sorry to interrupt. It's funny that Preston says that, because 95% of the players that we signed under Wagney were from non-league. So I'm hoping.
I don't necessarily think it was a derogatory thing. It's more of a comment.
It's just funny that
more. I've read some of the write-ups from Preston. I'm an analyst by trade, so I like data and numbers. Data and numbers, right? And I think it was more to the point of there's no real data on it in terms of sort of from a scouting position and how have we decided to sign this player? Like, what have we seen? I'm with you. I think, if early signs look good, the long throw is definitely a weapon. I would have some question marks defensively after what I saw on Cheltenham. But like you say, he's changed country. He's then ended up getting dragged down to Cheltenham on a coach.
Luxury.
Yeah, it's absolutely freezing. And you're thrown into a team that we've just discussed at length and not playing particularly well. So, and he's a young lad, right? And I think one of the things that sort of concerns me a little bit with the transfers that we're bringing in is I don't see much league experience to get us out of it.
I mean, I've always thought experience is a little bit overrated, but I do see your point in terms of you want. I mean, I think there was an emphasis on league experience in the summer window. You look at the likes of McCurdy, Malone, one or two others coming in. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but there was definitely an emphasis on getting players in who have played. Shimanga's played at League 2 level. Ryan Loft, I mean, for what his experience may or may not be worth, there was definitely an emphasis on getting some more experienced players. None of them are particularly,
No, but if you go through the players that we signed, I think Vassell, he looked okay.
So yeah, I mean, Vassell's been around the block. He's been in the Football League for a long time. And I thought he had a solid game.
He looked okay. I wouldn't necessarily be starting him over any of that back three, given what I've seen. And to go back to my earlier point, was he a necessity when Radcliffe is in our squad? That would be my question there. I think Taylor Richards looked lively again.
I think so. And you talk about a creative player, and I think whenever he touched the ball against Cheltenham and from Barnet as well, he always seems to like to drive the ball forwards rather than play it back.
Barnet as well, he was quite happy to take a shot on from outside the box. But I like the look of him, and you don't come through the Man City academy if you're a mug, right? And Brighton certainly don't spend £2.5 million without doing their kind of stuff and stuff. For whatever reason, it didn't work out for him at those levels. Again, he's not got 100 games at league level under his belt to kind of dig us out of it, right? So he looks a real kind of bright spark. We've not seen, is it Joaquin Fenwa? I think he's the other fullback. We've not seen him yet.
He's one who's worked with Scott at Swindon before, so Scott kind of relying on players he knows, which
the new Adiona up front has got no league experience.
Yeah, that doesn't inspire confidence, that one. And I mean, he could turn out to be a really useful player and get us 8-10 goals between now and the end of the season. But it's difficult to see that at the moment. I wasn't massively enamoured with his performance at Cheltenham. He didn't really get involved. I don't really remember him doing anything at all.
No, and again, I think if you go back to the point...
That might not be... Go on.
Yeah, the point I made at the start was, if you've got... Say you've got someone like a Shiminga. He can't get a game of football. He can't get a start. Right? Ryan Loft gets picked ahead of him. Is truly awful. I'm not going to mince my words there. And he can't get a start over here. Then he sees a non-league striker come in and start ahead of him. What does that say to you as a professional footballer? It says you're not good enough to be here. Look, league experience. I would argue Scott Malone, Harry McCurdy have probably been two of our better players this season. So there is something in that. I think Cashman came out of non-league. We've not necessarily seen that. I think there's unfortunately a lot of the stuff we've brought in from non-league this year and the free transfer. I mean, Reece Brown, for example, was at Forest Green last year and couldn't get a game at Forest Green, and then they're in the conference or the National League, and then we go, right, okay, we'll give you a leg up to League Two, and he looks a long way off it for me. So, I think it's still early. I'm guessing one or two will be going out as well as coming in.
Yeah, so we've already seen Ryan Sanford go. I mean, he's not
doing it. Eastbourne.
Miss him. Yeah, so he came back from Eastbourne this week. His loan ended. He's now been released from the club.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a big clear out of... I mean, you'd imagine one of Radcliffe or McKenna will leave the club in some capacity. Just because we've now got, I think that makes it 7 centre-backs on the books for 3 positions, which seems a bit excessive.
Yeah,
you'd imagine a midfielder will need to go. I mean, Dixon will go back to Charlton. You'd imagine he's not featured much.
Yeah.
So I imagine we'll see 4 or 5. I imagine we'll have to see some outgoings before we actually get anyone else in.
I think Dixon will
will
push
Ryan Lough
from
stick
the.
around?
Well,
I still feel like we need another striker. I still feel like we need another striker because.
Well, I think Dixon will push from me because Jamaica qualified for the World Cup, right? So,
Yeah.
or on the verge of qualifying for the World Cup. So, if he's got any ambition of being in the World Cup squad, he's going to need minutes somewhere, right? I thought he looked bright when he first came into the team. He's been pretty ineffective since then.
Yeah.
McKenna, I've never really been a huge fan of. I will happily give Ryan Lough the lift up to Cambridge. And again, I think we need to free up some space to get a striker in there that can hopefully hit the ground running and score goals, right? Because you look at, I thought the new Adiemo up front was fairly uninspiring against Cheltenham, and as we said, ran off his guy or let his guy run off him for the third goal, but he offered very little up top. So I that's definitely an area, and look, go by the top scorer in the National League South, right? If they banged in 20 goals and they're high on confidence, sometimes that's all it takes, right? Rather than someone that's played a million games in the league and isn't scoring. But I think it's been an okay start to the transfer window, but then I would look at it going back to what you were saying, Reuben, about sort of some of Preston's statistics and things. One of the points he kept making recently was to push Flint into a left wing back, and I think he did that against
Army. Yeah, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I thought. I mean, he didn't. I think he did okay, and I think this is one of the things where just using this as an example of a more general point about sort of Preston's match analysis, so to speak. He's obviously very data driven. He's obviously very statistically minded. He's looking at expected goals and all sorts of other stats, which I bring them up a lot. So I'm not anti. I'm quite analytical in that sense, but I think he's ignoring perhaps the context in which these stats might be being generated. So, for example, he talks about how Flint's got the best attacking numbers for a centre back. He's great at carrying the ball forward. Yeah. It's like, okay, so but is that happening because of where he's picking the ball up? He's picking the ball up deep, but if no one's challenging him, he's running into midfield and he's laying a pass off. He's not. He's receiving the ball in completely different positions to where he would be out on the left, where he's receiving the ball a lot higher up. He's not able to make those runs from deep. He's not able to carry the ball from deep. So it's a completely different position. It's not just because I think it ignores a little bit of the context of why these things are happening. It ignores the context. And he talks a lot about certain players should be playing in certain positions because they're generating a lot of XG or they're I think he's ignoring again the context of a midfield partnership or a centre back. You don't just play two players together because they've got the best numbers. It's not FIFA. You don't play two players together because they've got a 99 rating. Some players work better together than others. Some partnerships, partnerships, or centre back partnerships. So I think he's a little bit. I'm not saying he's completely wrong, and I think he raised some interesting points, but
I think there's two parts to that. I think the first is you can look at numbers and you can come up with some ideas, and it was an interesting thing to see it in effect. And for the first 15-20 minutes, I thought Josh was quite effective there. I know he obviously ran on the hit post, but if I take your point, and I hadn't considered it, I sit front row in the East Stand, so for at least half a game I get quite a good view of what's going on the left, and then I get quite a good view of what's going on the right. But yes, you make a really good point. One of the reasons that he can bomb on and he can run on is whether it be Adiema, whether it be Forster, they push forward and they'll take a player with them that creates that space. So obviously, if he's at left wing back and he's creating that space for Vassell in the Barnet game, right? Vassell's not going to run on like Mickey van der Ven and Josh Flint do. So, yeah, to a certain degree, you can follow the data and then maybe try it, and then you go, actually, the reason he gets those numbers and those areas is because you've got people creating the space. I mean, there was an argument recently about Victor Gyökeres at Arsenal saying that he doesn't score enough, but he gets players out of the way, right? 2 players go with him, and that's creating space for the likes of Rice and Zubimendi to score goals, right? I think it's the same with Josh Flint, right? They almost kind of part the sea for him to run into. A midfielder will take a guy off to the right, the wing back runs on and takes the right back out of the game, and then there's that space for him to run into. What I would also say is I've watched enough of Josh Flint to see him bomb on, get there, and have absolutely no idea what to do once he gets there.
That is fair. I wonder whether that's. I feel like is that a Josh Flint thing, or is that a sort of just the way we're set up, or is it the players around him not actually offering him options? It's something I noticed in the Cheltenham game where there's a couple of times he beat 2 or 3 players from forward because he's one of those players. Once he gets going, it's very hard to stop him.
You're only going to foul him, aren't you?
Yeah, but it's almost like he'll get to maybe 40, 30, 35 yards out, and he's looking for an option. He's like, right, okay, I've got the ball now. What do I do now? Like, is there someone out wide? Is there someone you can play 1-2 with, or is there a striker dropping to? And often there's not a lot going on for him. And is that a coaching thing? Is that or is he just not? Or are these things happening and he's just not seeing it? It's a tricky one to solve because I think he's probably got the attributes to play out wide. I think he's got a great left foot. He's got a good engine on him. He's robust. He covers the ground well. But whether if you're looking at it from a purely like he generates so many chances. His game out on the left will be fundamentally different to when he's playing at centre back.
Essentially,
yeah. And so I think it's really tough to see. It's tough to see how to get the best out of him when you put it like that. At centre back, he's able to pick the ball up, drive from deep, and then suddenly the game stops in front of him because no one's making a run. Often, I feel like part of the problem is we have very few players making a run in behind and stretching the centre.
I would agree with that.
Because we've got Loft up front, he's not going to run in behind. That's not his game. McCurdy's the one forward player we've got who actually runs in behind, but he's been either suspended or injured for parts of the season. He's only really just coming back to fitness. We haven't really got anyone else who wants to.
There's 2 things with that, with the running in behind that I've noticed this season, particularly with Loft, or 3 things. So I joke about this with people, but if you watch Ryan Loft, he seems to jump too early to win a header. Right?
I was chatting to to my dad and one of the guys we stand with. I was saying to him, it's almost like he's trying to avoid the ball.
Right. He's almost on his way back down when the ball gets there.
It's like gravity has a stronger effect on him than other players. It's bizarre.
I completely agree.
His positional instinct, kind of, I think it's part of the same thing. His positional instinct. He's never where the ball is going.
No.
But the ball, and it's not as if the ball's getting, say, Conroy.
I would love to know what his header or what his duels won statistic is, because I would imagine it's pretty low. But so you've got 2 things. You, as the guy that's going to run in beyond, so if that's McCurdy, for example, when we play this system with Loft and McCurdy needs to have the belief that Loft's going to win that ball 9 times out of 10, right? And that running beyond. And I think part of that at the moment is actually Loft's going to lose that header 9 times out of 10. So you don't want to run in beyond because then you've got to run back harder to try and get back into your defensive shape. So I think that's one problem. The other problem is we don't have runners from midfield. We touched on the kind of Cashmans, the roles. Louie Watson's another one. I don't really know what Louie Watson is. He's not an attacking midfielder, and I don't really see him as a defensive midfielder.
He's a very good footballer. He's very good on the ball. He's very technically gifted. He kind of carries the ball well. He looks tidy. He's a good passer of the ball, but it's kind of difficult. It's difficult to see how he fits into a midfield 3 or a midfield 4 or however we're set up. It's really quite. I don't think. For all his good attributes, he's one of those players. He's got a lot of good attributes, but he perhaps needs to find he's never
really had a fair sort of shape, has he? I mean, he came in got injured. I mean, he looked decent when he came in last year. He got injured and he's not really been able to kind of cement a starting position. But again, it's, the same. And then if you play, say, Bromley, where you would anticipate that we would maybe set up a little bit more defensively, and you'd want Loft winning those headers, and then you would want Forster and Adiemo running in behind. But as the wing backs, they're not confident that he's ever going to win that header, and then they're massively out of position. And then if that ball gets recycled, and then Barker has to come out to right back, no one drops in, and suddenly we can see the goal. I think there's an element of kind of fear that we're never going to win that ball, and how do we then turn that around into a defensive shape, right? And then, I don't particularly rate Harvey Davies. I don't think he's any better than JJ Wollacott. But his distribution has got a bit better second half of the season. I don't like this playing around with the ball at the back. Let's pass it across the 6-yard line, because I don't think we're anywhere near solid enough to be doing that sort of stuff. Call me old-fashioned, but it should be the box wide, unless we're 4-0 up, right, with 2 minutes to play, and it's physically impossible for us to throw it away. But I think there's definitely still some sort of change. And I think, even if you look back to last season, we didn't really play that running behind style. We never really suited Will Swan's game. But he's obviously gone to Bradford. He's scoring goals for fun now. So I think if you get the right sort of attackers in the system, it can work. I can see the logic behind a kind of Loft-McCurdy partnership. It's a bit sort of old school. It's a bit Crouchy / Defoe type thing. But yeah, I watch Ryan Loft quite intently, and it's almost like he jumps 2 seconds too early. And whereas Ronaldo can hang in the air for about a week waiting for a ball to land on his head, Ryan Loft's the opposite. He seems to come back down to earth a lot quicker than the defender. So it's really difficult to know why we're playing that system. And if we can see these things as fans, then effectively people with coaching badges should be able to see it too, right?
I think it's. I always contrast back to the promotion-winning team, because that's the most logical thing to. That's the only other full season we've had under Scott, and the sort of best example of what you can do with a team. And if you look at the players we had then, we had Jeremy Kelly, we had Crawley Lawless, we had obviously Orsi up front, who not only was he scoring goals, he was running the channels, he was occupying defenders, he was able to hold his own up front. We had natural width with Cerula and Gordon. We had quite a well balanced team, even if I think it wasn't. I think the playoffs actually did slightly flatter us that season. If you look at some of the sort of performances and some of the sort of numbers and stuff, but that was an example of you could see Scott was trying to replicate that this season with bringing in Cashman to replace Kelly, with having I think was Shamanga meant to be a Danilo Orsi type, Harry McCurdy was meant to maybe be a Crawley Lawless type. But we haven't got someone. If you look at what those players' roles were on the pitch, Lawless was bringing the ball forward. He was linking up with Orsi. If Orsi won the ball, Lawless would be on it. You had Adam Campbell playing as well. We had 3 players getting to double figures that season. You had, and then you had Liam Kelly, who had 5 or 6 goals.
And Orsi was a bit of a slow start that season.
He scored a couple of goals early on, but it took him a while to get going.
Yeah.
And he ended up obviously scoring 20, 25 goals or whatever, or 20, whatever it was, 22, 23 goals. It's just, obviously, if you had goals to any team, I think if you added, it sounds a bit silly, but if you added Orsi and Lawless to this team, we'd be in a much healthier position, because we'd have players getting on the end of those chances. We'd actually have players finishing those chances.
Yeah, I mean, but there's rumours that Lolos might come back.
I saw those earlier. Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense. I mean,
I do.
He's obviously not played much football since leaving us. It hasn't worked out for him at Bolton. He obviously got a nasty injury quite early on there, which kept him out for a while. I think when players get injuries and they don't get to settle into a new team, it often can turn out like that. They just don't ever really get going.
I think he could be the missing part, because you just made a really interesting point. So when you had Horsey running the channels and Lolos would find those spaces, that's what's missing, right? There's nobody in that kind of 10/false 9 sort of position when that space is created. And Lolos, I love people shooting from outside the box, because if a goalkeeper spills it, someone like an Horsey's running in, right, and they'll finish it. You get that kind of poacher's finish. Or, occasionally, particularly in League One, League Two, the ball's going to squirm under a goalkeeper, right, on a particularly horrible wet pitch on a Wednesday night at the Broadfield. And those are the sort of things that your season could turn on, that you get one of those in the 80th minute, and it helps to turn the corner. And I just think, I look at the bench and I don't see game changers, and I think that's a big problem at any level of football. I don't think we lack workmanship, but I think we lack a little bit of design. I mean, I was a massive Jeremy Kelly fan. Might not have been the best footballer in the world, but he always gave everything he had. He always left it out on the pitch, right? And 9 times out of 10, he would get a 7 out of 10 rating. And I think sometimes we just need 3 or 4 players that are going to get a 7 out of 10 every week to sort of build the team around. You don't need 11 superstars. But, for the most part, our back three is the same as it was last year, and it looked pretty solid for a large portion of last year, particularly the back end of the season when Scott came back. Whereas this season, they don't seem to know what to do.
It's almost like the more they play together, the worse they get. It's it just feels like a relationship that needs to be broken up. It almost just feels like they need, for their own sakes, for just
they need a break from each other.
Yeah, something like that. I mean,
it's
interesting what you said about sort of game changers and superstars. I just want to touch on that, because if I look at our team, it's particularly about creativity and just making something happen. I think I can see 2 players who, if they get on the ball, I'm thinking something could happen there. And it's Adiemo and Pereira. And I know you said earlier you've not been too impressed with Pereira, but he is in terms of league, across the whole of League Two, he's one of the most creative players in the league. And if he's got abilities to beat his man. Yeah, and he is more of a winger, but obviously we play wing backs, and it's the same with Adiemo. He gets on the ball, and you think, Christ, anything like he's always got the ability to beat his man and get a ball in.
He has. He's also got the ability occasionally to beat himself, which I love.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, but he is someone who gets on the ball. I mean, that triple chance against Colchester on Boxing Day, it came from him beating his man and getting a good ball in. Hopefully Johnny Russell. I mean, Johnny Russell at Cheltenham, going back to sort of new transfers or new signings rather. I thought he looked a bit slow. That was the most alarming thing. He didn't look up to the pace of League Two. I think League Two is quite a slow league anyway. If you've got a modicum of pace, you're a really interesting player in League Two. But he looks a bit slow. I think it was the corner they scored, possibly the first or second goal from. Well, it was something where and it resulted in a corner, but he's tried to see the ball out, and there one of the Cheltenham players just nipped around him and got across him, and it's like I wasn't massively overwhelmed by him, I've got to say. And again, it's his debut. He literally just signed the day before. I'm not going to, Glentoran fans were raving about him, so hopefully there's a player there. I don't think there's a great history of players from the Northern Irish League making it into the Football League over here. It's typically a very tricky step up, which is why a lot of clubs don't recruit from there. Even the best players from Northern Ireland don't often do too well over here.
Well, you consider as well that a lot of these teams that like you said at the start, I think Preston compared the Irish Premier League to sort of non-league here, and some of those teams will have been in European competitions at the start of this year, right? So, look, I'm with you. I know exactly what you're talking about. He thought he would just let it roll out for a corner. The ball slowed up. He got absolutely done. I think he learned from that. But yeah, look, at the same time, nobody wants to live in a world where you're buying a kid and going, right, go out there and kind of change our season, right? You want to bring them in slowly. I mean, I'm with you. I think Adiemo is a brilliant player. I think he's really exciting. He'll run.
Which one?
The old Adiemo. So I think he's great. I mean, I Josh, because I do always say to my son, you know, sometimes I think his brain moves quicker than his feet, and he can. I've literally seen Adiemo nutmeg himself, and I think he's just brilliant. And I love him, but he does look a little devoid of confidence the last couple of games that we've played. And I think he is very much a confidence type player. He has to have that confidence to be able to run on, and like you say, create that space to get across in, to create chances. And sometimes that comes from Josh Flint, again, coming forwards and taking a defender out of the way, because a lot of the time teams will double up on Addy because they know that he's a threat.
Yeah.
But I would say him and Harry on the other side this season, or not this season, the last 5-6 weeks, they look very short on confidence. And I think they're two players that really thrive when they're playing in a winning side. Everyone does, right? But in a more confident side, and give them a bit more license to do their jobs.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thankfully, we've now got a few days, just over a week now without a game. So hopefully that'll allow the players to actually work on the training pitch, maybe bring in a couple more signings, and for the new players to gel. So thanks very much, Bradley and Louie, for joining me for this episode, and we'll catch you all in the next one. Come on, you Reds.